Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We will give it another minute or so, just so others can join, and then we can get started. Thanks for being here. Welcome again, everyone, to today's Health AI Hub. We are so glad to have you here. Just a few reminders about upcoming events for the Health AI Partnership. So for our AI in Action event that specifically focuses on empowering our safety net providers, our next speaker, Scott, from the Coalition of Orange County Community Health Center, will be talking about due diligence for AI product procurement within the safety net community. And you can register for this at the provided link. I will also drop a registration link in the chat shortly. And then for our real world AI series that really focuses on implementation in collaboration with Aim High within the Kaiser Permanente network, our next speakers will be Dr. Wadi and Nimati from UCSD, and they will be focusing on a sepsis prediction model and the process of integrating that into health systems. Again, I will provide a registration link in the chat shortly. And to today's event, welcome Michael Burns and Michael Shepard from Michigan Medicine, who will be speaking on building transparency, AI model cards inventory. Michaels, if you're on, please feel free to turn your videos on and I will stop share.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Sarah, maybe we can give Michael co-host access. Are you able to share screen?
Be able to share. Yeah.
Awesome.
I'll try and do that now. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Would you like me to start?
Yes.
Yes.
Go.
Great.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Michael Shepard. I'm Data Foundation's director and co-chair of the Clinical Intelligence Committee called the CIC here at Michigan Medicine. Today, Michael Burns was supposed to join me, and I hope he still will. He is a physician and anesthesiologist and is currently in the hospital system and was hoping that he could duck out in between cases so that he could co-present along with me. If he does show up, I'll certainly defer to him for comment. And otherwise, we have a pretty exciting presentation for you here today if you're into model cards. We are certainly in the metadata management here in the CIC and starting to invest more time into that activity. So I will go into presentation mode. I'll just start off by saying that Dr. Burns and I have been longtime supporters now of HAIP. We find this organization of all the other consortiums and professional groups that we interact with as part of our responsibilities in artificial intelligence here at Michigan Medicine to be the most engaging, the most informative, thanks in large part to those who run it, Sierra, Mark, Afia, and others. And we appreciate the opportunity to talk with you here today. Some of the information we'll be sharing with you is inspired in part by information we have picked up through HAIP and have taken that valuable input into consideration as we lay out a roadmap into the future for how we approve and improve on metadata management here through model cards. What I'll do is I'm going to give you a little bit of information about Michigan Medicine and the Clinical Intelligence Committee. Then we'll talk about AI model cards in the general sense, and we'll talk about the model cards that we historically used here in Michigan Medicine. And then talk about the gaps that we've experienced in trying to support a metadata management library that captures how AI is used at this organization, and then finally outline the roadmap for the future for us. If at any time you have any questions, please raise your hand. I am in screen sharing mode, so it would be difficult for me to see that you raised your hand. So from a facilitator standpoint, if someone just wants to come off mute and ask questions, feel free. And I'm sure that we'll get through this presentation material with enough time to ask questions at the end too. I'm also interested in hearing what others are doing in this space. And as part of collaboration and learning through this organization, it's always interesting to hear the experiences others have with metadata management and model cards at their institution. The stats I'm giving in the splash screen are specific to the Central University of Michigan Hospital System, recently rebranded to be called Michigan Medicine UMC, and that's for a medical college, right? And our sort of academic medical center. We have recently acquired Sparrow Hospital System in the center of Michigan, which really doubles our capacity. And then we have several other hospital systems that we either have acquired in recent years or have partnerships with throughout the state of Michigan. So the numbers will be much higher if I was including those regional sites. We are in the middle of a IT integration and Epic integration project, which feeds into some of the motivation behind our revamping of AI model cards. It certainly creates some urgency around it as the scope of the CIC's responsibilities are increasing. So what is the CIC? The CIC's mission statement is here. I'm going to zero right in on a couple of sentences here for you, and that I think are particularly important. The CIC provides AI governance focused on establishing and enforcing standards for quality, safety, and efficiency in patient care and business operations. CIC leaders collaborate with and report to the Michigan Medicine Information Technology Operations and Management Committee. So this is a chartered committee in the CIC reporting up to a top tier committee that is responsible for larger IT projects both from a budgeting standpoint as well as a prioritization standpoint. And key business leaders are involved in both the ITO&M level and at the CIC level. Our responsibility really since 2019 has grown from more of an evaluation committee to a true endorsement body, as well as education and consultation. As you see here, these are the three pillars of our activities. Education, an example, is really the collaborations that the CIC undertakes with organizations throughout Michigan Medicine and the University of Michigan to develop training materials for the entire institution to raise their awareness of AI and also um, to to promote the safe use of that product, both from a generative AI perspective as well as a deterministic AI in your traditional predictive models. Governance activities are largely around endorsement, so evaluating proposals. The CIC is seen as a front door to requesting central enterprise IT resources. So if you have the need for central HITS resources at Michigan Medicine to implement your AI project, you come to the CIC and present that. And we collect information. We go through a formal evaluation process with voting members and determine whether or not this is a valuable project, both on its own merit as well as when compared to likewise AI projects that might be competing for the same resources and budget. If endorsed, then goes to ITO&M for additional budgeting or straight to HITS, the Central IT Division at Michigan Medicine, for prioritization with its other non-AI projects. Consultation enablement is just that. We meet with people throughout Michigan Medicine on a week in and week out basis to talk about their proposals, to talk about constraints in the organization. And those topics range from discussing AI platforms for ML ops and the merits of those, to talking about policy for the institution, to consulting with other groups throughout the University of Michigan, outside of Michigan Medicine, on our our work in governing, for instance, the implementation of ChatGPT in the clinical space or in the medical school space. This is our general alignment. We have committee sponsors, and both the Chief Medical Information Officer and the Chief Nursing Informatics Officer in Michigan Medicine. Our committee leaders are Dr. Michael Burns, who is also the AI ACMIO for Michigan Medicine, and me, who is also the Data Foundations Director in HITS, and Sean Meyer, who's the lead data scientist for CIC as well as for the Central HITS Computing Division. Our committee membership profile is split into two groups. We have core members, and those core members are endorsing members. They represent clinical departments throughout the institution. There's now over 20 endorsing members. So when an endorsement comes before the monthly committee meeting, they're the ones that ultimately vote to endorse. Or they can defer. Defer means that not enough information or the right kind of information was provided for them to make a determination and endorse on this technology. And so the person is invited, the AI champion is invited to go back through the process again if they fulfill the requirements that we laid out for them. There are other members, meaning that the entire committee is around 55 people. And those other members are non-voting members, but we rely on them for subject matter expertise in the clinical space, as well as the data science space and the legal space and compliance spaces. So it's a really exciting monthly meeting that we run. There's a lot of interest and energy around it. We're really grateful for that. When I joined this committee, it was first formed, as I said, in 2019, and there's probably 6 of us in the room focused on ML models used in the clinical space. And to see it grow with attention and energy has been a wonderful process. I will say, though, that the Clinical Intelligence Committee is a volunteer organization, and that plays into some of the comments I'll make about model cards in a few minutes. None of the people that you see in this list are actually directly funded by the Clinical Intelligence Committee. It doesn't have its own funding line. So it's sort of a side hustle for us all, though it's a chartered committee. And it carries a lot of responsibility. It's only a fraction of the work that we all do for the institution. So that constraint on our time has led us to certain activities, conclusions around what we need to do with metadata management, for instance. So if you're looking for just an idea of governance workflow, there it is. I won't go too deep into this slide, but this is how our endorsement process works. We are largely an Epic first organization, meaning that we focus on deploying AI technology on ECCP in Epic. However, we do support a number of non-Epic models, and we do go through an endorsement process for those AI solutions hosted on other platforms. But this particular workflow, as you see, terminates in an implementation in ECCP, which is Epic. Okay, well, that was enough about the CIC. Let's talk about model cards. So the CIC supports a model card library, um, and I think many of you may already be familiar with model cards, but just in case you're not, I thought it'd be helpful in the next couple of slides to level set on what model cards are and what they are not. So model cards are metadata document templates. You could think of them as if you're from a programmer background, an IT background, something as simplistic as a README file. That information or metadata about the program that you are running. And they are a foundational artifact of a healthy AI governance framework. They explain the what, why, who, and how of specific AI models. And so when you need to understand how a particular AI is working, you should be able to go to a repository and look at a description of that model in human terms and understand how it works and what its intended audience is and where it fits, if it does at all, in a clinical workflow. Where is the intervention occurring based on that model's performance? Those things should all be in model cards. They support governance principles like FATE and FAVES. Those are common acronyms, and you see what they stand for here. If you're unfamiliar with them, I've included links in this deck to everything that I'm discussing with you today. And that reference material is really valuable. So if anybody here wants to learn more, I'd be happy to share this deck out, and folks can click into some of these links and do a deeper dive on model cards. The term model card is credited to a white paper written model cards for model reporting back in 2018. So they're not that old. At Michigan Medicine, when we stood up the CIC, it was only about a year after the term model card was first officially recognized as being coined that we stood up our own model card library to start capturing the work we were doing in support of Epic models. So some early voices that shaped specifications on models were Google and Hugging Face. And still to this day, you can go out there and see their evolving specifications on what model cards should contain. As far as who ingests model cards and uses them, you're going to look at the personas like the AI application developer, the information assurance analyst, the institutional data steward, the AI governance committee members. Those people will go in and look at the metadata and should look at the metadata from their perspective. So if you're an AI application developer, there's some technical specifications in a model card that gives you an idea of how the model should perform and how you can write an application that'll interact with it. For information assurance analysts, you should see the security associated with that. What data is it using? And that also applies to the institutional data stewards. They want to know how the model is trained. Was it trained on the right data? And the model card should suggest at least the data sets used at the institution that would have trained that model, or if there are data sets at the institution at all that were used in training that model. Those things would be important for data stewards to consider. And then, of course, there's AI governance committees, which is sort of an umbrella over top of the other groups and personas. But our interest from the AI governance perspective is that there's transparency in models that we endorse. And through that transparency, we're assuring that the right people have access to information about the AI technology. Here's just some brief examples here of non-health system model cards. Hugging Face uses a YAML technology. It's built right into their portal, and you can see their model cards in action. And their model cards that are hosted on their site. I'm sorry, their AI models that are hosted on their site have model cards attached. And developers will build YAML files and upload those files, and they get deployed and embedded then into the portal in human readable, useful information. If you look at Google AI, here's Google AI's model card template. And shout out to HAIP, who has also crafted a model card template in response to something closer to home for all of us, which is the HIT1 regulation, which is an inspiration for the work we're doing here in CIC and how we're structuring our metadata elements. And so there's a lot of great examples of what model cards look like and how they can be useful to the organization. And there's even out there in GitHub repositories like Hugging Face and Google, you can find the links to it through their sites where they have posted up their model card solutions that enable you to build that into, say, an automated MLOps process or something, so that there's less data entry and less manual curation of information. And we'll again get into that in just a few minutes in the roadmap ahead. So for model cards at Michigan Medicine, as I said, 2019, we started standing up our own model card list. For expediency's sake, taking into account the fact that we are a volunteer organization, we went with the technology available to us to start capturing model cards. And SharePoint was chosen as a platform for that. Right now, we have a total of 24 model cards in that model card library. That doesn't mean that since 2019, we've only considered 24 AI solutions. It's just that today there's 24 we're currently tracking. There are some that came through our system over the years that we tracked through a research perspective, never went, as much AI technology does not, never went into production, into workflows, eventually was sort of abandoned in place, and we retired those from our model card library. So today we have 24 models that are a combination of Epic delivered models and non-Epic delivered models. Most are deterministic or predictive ML models. There are a few that implement generative AI technology, but our platform has primarily been endorsing to date ML predictive analytics models, but that is shifting very quickly. So you see here, we focused on models that have gone through the CIC for endorsement. That 24 in that number is representative of models at one time or another have come before the CIC for consideration. There's a lot of AI activity at Michigan Medicine, and so we recognize, that there are gaps in our total inventory against something we've taken into consideration as we look at the roadmap ahead. You can see from the screen grab over on the right, uh, our respected lead data scientist, Sean Meyer, has a little icon up top there to show that he created that model card. There's some basic information about the model itself. This is just a tile. We have many more data points that we try to track in our model card besides the model name, for instance, a description and outcome definition. We have a combination of kind of industry practice data elements and data elements that are specific to Michigan Medicine, especially to our IA division, Information Assurance, who prescribe certain data points that must be captured around enterprise technology, including AI. For instance, who's the technical owner? Who is the business owner? Those key terms, along with putting names next to them, is very important to IA when it comes to information security. So those things are all part of our model cards. So what are the challenges? Why are we shifting gears in recent months away from a manually curated, SharePoint maintained list of model cards to something different? And we went through recognizing that our current solution has a lot of gaps. The current library is manually curated and is labor intensive to maintain. Because we are a volunteer organization, we lack the capacity for a lot of manual data curation, especially if we want to expand the library beyond the models that come directly through the CIC for endorsement. So say we understand the pathology or radiology, which they do have a lot of AI technology that they've stood up over the years that hasn't necessarily come to the CIC for a variety of reasons. One would be that they stood that technology up before the CIC was really doing regular endorsements. And so they were grandfathered in with those solutions. And how do we get those? How do we engage with those individuals, and how do we get those people to provide us information when their schedules are very busy? And to them, we at this point may look like an unnecessary hurdle. And so because we're volunteer, it's hard for us to track those groups down and continually engage with them and make sure information is accurate. Some models do not contain accurate, timely, or actionable information for AI governance when it's needed at each stage of the life cycle. What I mean by that is you don't need everything that a model card suggests is useful data at the very front door at the time of say endorsement. So if you look at the whole life cycle, when a technology comes before the CIC, it might still be in a very immature state. It's looking for resources for build and implementation. And at that point, there may not be a fully trained data set. There might be, but there might not be results to gain from that that can be documented and put into a model card. But you do know who's the AI champion. You do know who the business/technical owner is. You should be able to curate contact information at the time of proposal. And so we don't always have all that relevant information. And then when a model goes live in today's life cycle, we're not necessarily going back and collecting all the rest of that information after it's passed endorsement, and then making sure that information stays active and accurate throughout the entire production life cycle of the model. And that's what we want to fix. The current library is not complete, as we talked about. It's really focused largely on what the CIC currently endorsed or has endorsed in recent months. Data elements are not self-describing or intuitive. By that, I mean that we generated data elements back in 2019 and have revised them a few times, but it has been largely an organic process in which we recognize that that people, when we talk with them and interview them, they don't necessarily understand what a particular data element means and what information we're looking for. And so then we have to go down kind of an exhaustive definition of what that data element is. And then if someone else came up with a previous incarnation of that model card list, they might have meant something else. So we recognize there's room for improvement there in our current model card library in terms of making the data elements much more self-describing, requiring less of a data dictionary to interpret what somebody should expect to enter into that field. Data elements have not remained aligned with industry or regulatory recommendations. Here's where I'm talking mainly about HTI-1. Hopefully everybody here is familiar with that regulation, and if not, we can talk more about that. But of all the regulatory activity that has gone on at the federal level, at the state level, that talk about prohibiting bias in models, talk about transparency in AI, from the presidential executive order on the way down, there's general agreement that those things are dangerous when there's no transparency, when there's bias in models that could affect the safety of patients or accessibility of treatment. But not a lot of prescription about what exactly a organization should do to avoid getting in trouble with federal regulatory agencies. But HTI-1 is more prescriptive. It includes things in there that further define what AI transparency is. And while Michigan Medicine is not required to necessarily go through a certification process with the ONC to comply with HTI-1, it actually inspired us to say, well, because this is the most prescriptive ruling, and we can actually take point on this, then we can craft some of our metadata elements to make sure they map directly to some of the information in that ruling. So then data elements do become more self-describing, and they do remain aligned with industry and regulatory recommendations. So our recommendation to CIC is we follow and stay aligned with that ruling and make sure that we use that as a sanity check against our model card 2.0. Okay, so what makes good model cards, and what should our solution scope be? This is where we launched into work in just recent months to improve on our model cards, and I thought it'd be helpful to share with you all that the kinds of guiding principles that we identified and what makes good model cards. And so model cards should be extensible to capture evolving AI technology, its intended use, and evolving regulatory landscape. So anything we build today, we should be prepared to say accommodate some key differences in our metadata model that would show the difference in qualitative/quantitative measures in a predictive model versus a generative AI model, right? There's kind of, not to mention the different types of machine learning algorithms that could be used in any model, and that could then change some of those metrics. And we need to make sure that, we're accounting for that. We have an extensible library of elements to capture the differences between those, because not all AI technology is one thing, as we all know. It's a pretty broad landscape. AI and AI model card data should be self-describing and intuitive to use. So I think I've hit that nail on the head a few times with the hammer. So the next one is the MMAI model cards should be accessible to a wide audience. Back to who are the personas that need access to it. All right, now it's accessible through SharePoint, But as Dr. Burns and I recognize, there's a lot of people interested in looking at the CIC's content, and it's hidden behind some belts and suspenders type of authentication. That means you really need to to reach out to the CIC admins to get access to that SharePoint repository to interact with it, and that's a bit of a barrier. So our presentation layer should make sure that it is this metadata library is available to AI application developers, healthcare professionals, researchers, executive leadership, data, AI, and IT governance. That's a pretty broad spectrum of people. So we need to make sure that we take the next step and get beyond, say, a SharePoint list and offer a easily consumable visualization of model cards. AI model card manual data entry should be minimized in favor of integration with operational systems. And there's a few opportunities I'll outline here that we've been working on in the next couple of slides to address that guiding principle. The solution architecture scope is, we're going to use a use case driven, extensible solution to express specific model types and algorithms. So, that we need to recognize that, that we're going to have a data model that is going to flex to accommodate new requirements. We're going to create metadata that will be provided and maintained by the model owners. Rather than have us go out and collect all the data through interview processes using resources we really have to beg and borrow from other teams to assist us with, we want to enable model owners, model developers to provide this information on their own. And then finally, we have a model card metadata repository and solution will be hosted and supported by Michigan Medicine HITS. So this is really just about who's going to own the product when it's all done. So our central IT organization in HITS will continue to maintain that metadata repository once it's built. Okay, so when we look at AI ML solutions, I think it's important for us to outline the different types of model categories that we have to make sure we're documenting and provide a description to them and who are they for. So this is a more granular list of the kinds of models that come through for endorsement and that we have to account for and make sure that our data model for our model card library is able to support them. So we have Epic AI predictive models, we have Epic Gen AI application features, we have Michigan Medicine custom AI models, we have vendor applications with integrated AI features, and we have vendor AI predictive and Gen AI models. As you go down the list from top to bottom, you can really you can infer priority from this list by going from the first Epic AI predictive models down to vendor AI predictive and Gen AI models. So, if there's a scoping call in a first phase, we want to make sure that we're taking into account Epic metadata for those vendor delivered models and getting that clearly surfaced and for all those personas in the previous slide to interact with. And as you go down, we want to make sure we're accounting for those things, but they become a little less important to us when we kind of balance that against the resources constraints we have in the CIC. So then we've outlined a phased implementation plan. Phase one is building a new data store and a dashboard. And it's going to include the Epic predictive and Gen AI model information. It's going to extend the Caboodle data warehouse with a custom metadata management data mart. We're going to ingest Epic Chronicles DSI data describing models. We're going to build a Tableau dashboard for presentation. So let me just go a little more detail through those components. This is what is in progress right now. and something we're really excited to be working on. So Epic has a DSI application component that is, I believe, in their IDA records, and they boast that that DSI Epic model component is HTI-1 compliant. And so we took all those data elements out of there. We used, for comparison's sake, two mapping resources. One, we downloaded information from the UMC about HTI-1 and to validate that mapping, and the HAIP model card template. And we used those three documents, what we downloaded from the DSI component, the information available to us in the ONC site around HDI1, AI model transparency, and HAPS model card proposal. And we said, do these all match up? Because if they match up, then we have something that's more self-describing. We have something more intuitive to use. And it requires very little translation or transformation if we want to pull that data out of the Epic Chronicles records and put them into a data warehouse. And the answer was 100% yes. So congratulations to HAIP and your proposal, and certainly thanks to Epic for kind of getting us started in this space, because this is where we conquer a few of those guiding principles in the previous slide. If we're focused on an Epic first strategy and we pull those DSI data points from Epic and bring them first through Clarity, then go through a transformation, because right now they're in JSON, parse those out and put them in the Caboodle data warehouse in Epic. Now we have a data repository that is pre-built with a lot of the information that we need in a model card. So after that, we're dealing with a much smaller bit of information that is not automatically populated, like who is the AI champion or AK business owner here, who is the technical owner. That kind of Michigan Medicine specific information we'll still need to curate. So this work is underway today. The Tableau dashboard. The reason we picked Tableau is for two reasons. One is what is available to us today. As an institution, we are making a proposal to move to Power BI. But at this time, Tableau is our strategic tool. It's the tool that visualizes data and makes it available to the widest audience in Michigan Medicine, and that's one of our goals and guiding principles. So taking it out of SharePoint and putting it in Tableau is going to be important for this presentation layer. Next steps, what do we do after that? Well, integrating with Michigan Medicine's HITS ML Ops metadata solution. It's not started yet, and the ML Ops proposal is still underway. So I'm collaborating with the leaders in that space to make sure that we're aligned from a governance perspective and a solution architecture perspective on that side. So when that technology is finally picked, and it could be at this point a front runner's ML flow, we want to make sure that it has the integration API capabilities to supply our metadata catalog with the information it needs. So automatically populated, again, reducing manual curation of information. We figure if we have an enterprise MLOps solution in place in the near term, and we have ECCP available to us with the model cards metadata already available in Epic Chronicles, then we are covering the majority of the enterprise AI work that's going through Michigan Medicine. It'll be automatically built into automated pipelines that'll populate our metadata repository, and we'll be reporting off of it. And no longer are we reaching out to all of the individual clinical departments and asking if in their space they have adopted AI technology that we need to inventory and govern in the road ahead. Instead, we are going to count on the fact that they are leveraging one of these platforms. And that if they're outside of that space, it's an anomaly. And we'll address that anomaly, in a kind of an 80-20 rule scenario as it comes up. So that's phase 3, if it comes about, which is we have here at this institution what we call trusted service providers. And that is essentially a description for distributed IT across the health system. So while we have a central IT organization, we have sophisticated IT operations going on throughout the institution, and they're called trusted service providers. They can stand up their own solutions in that space. I recently referenced radiology and pathology, good examples. In that case, the individuals there, may have their own technology stack top to bottom. They may not adopt the phase 2 ML ops platform. And in that case, then we'll have to work to integrate their ML ops hosting solutions with our metadata repository. But as I said, we'll cross that bridge when it comes. We're probably a few months away from completing phase 1. Development is underway. And I hope that we'll move on to phase 2 in the months ahead. This is a very fluid time for us since we're, as I said, going through some pretty large changes here with one Epic and one IT organization across region and central AMC. So work priorities in the CIC may shift around, but we'll do our best to keep promoting the importance of the work. Just a quick solution architecture diagram of what we're working on today. SharePoint could still be used at this point to capture some of that important contact information that's not pre-built into the models. But this shows how we just, I described earlier, plan to extend the Caboodle data warehouse with a new data mart, which is represented in yellow blocks here, and present that information in a Tableau layer. A lot of advantages to this, and in the future, this just represents again integrating outside sources like MLflow. And these two reference architectures highlight a focus on a custom Caboodle data store. Depending on the additional ML ops solutions picked, it might be in our best kind of strategic interest to stand up a separate data store outside of Caboodle to be our metadata repository, and that's highlighted there in that alternative solution architecture description. So it remains to be determined where we go beyond this first phase. So could be an interesting topic for this group at a later date. So benefits of revising the models is we're going to reduce labor-intensive and error-prone model code library maintenance. We're going to support for extensible model card templates for specific model types and context. We are leveraging existing vendor documentation where available. And we're providing greater visibility into our AI landscape to meet the federal regulatory guidelines. And we are building metadata elements that conform to standard industry or regulatory names. So all of that we'll already have in phase 1. That's what I've got for you today. How are we doing on time?
We're doing great. Thank you so much, Michael, for the fantastic presentation. We'll now take questions from our audience. You're welcome to put your question in the chat or use the raise hand feature.
Either it was really boring or that was a fire hose of information you can't respond to. I'm not sure which.
We'll take the question from Varun.
Michael, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. And I really loved how you stepped through the challenges and also landed on the architecture specifically. Something that struck me while you were presenting was the number of different personas that this particular tool and document has to satisfy in terms of requirements. And you highlighted that in terms of governance, developers, maybe even patient communities, federal regulators. Um, and I think oftentimes they do have conflicting requirements. Governance might have more breadth in need of information, whereas developers might need much more depth, which is how you've actually architected that solution. So I'm curious, it seems like you've narrowed down the priority for developers and governance sort of sits on top of that. But I'm curious if that was a conscious decision or if that's something that just came up through discussion with the team.
Excellent question. And I think that it was definitely a deliberate decision, and we arrived at it because the CIC, while a governance organization, um, is still largely a community of practice, buoyed by people who are interested in the safe implementation of AI, but are also active developers themselves. And so pretty much all of our endorsing members, even those that operate um, in high levels of the institution, will roll up their sleeves and have shown a lot of interest in personally building or leading activities around the construction of AI solutions. Because of that, that really brought that focus in on this should be a model card library that's useful to me. And I think they all think from that persona of someone who wants to build a solution, show the initiative, and implement something that improves patient care.
Right, we have a question in the chat from Kate. How do you manage data updates that impact model changes, maybe across specialties? Kate, if you want to elaborate, that would be great. Or Michael, if you want to take a first stab at that.
This is Kate. I'm sort of getting at either language or race data, as well as when you don't have that data, are you guys looking at synthetic data and how do you handle model performance if you don't have enough data from particular values?
Really good question. So I can tell you that the endorsement process has an open Q&A period in which we ask about the data that was used, and that's usually the first time we're exposed to it. Um, and I think it would be valuable as part of the model card process in preparing for endorsement to make sure that our endorsing members have access to that information prior to the actual presentation on a monthly meeting, so it can be thought about, in kind of, more consideration, deeper terms. That's one improvement we can make. Um, the consultation on enablement side is also a space where if we're engaged with early enough, our lead data scientist and Sean Meyer or Dr. Burns and myself would engage with them to talk about the data quality. Where are they getting the data? Is it appropriate from our perspective before it comes to endorsement? Um, and we have to take it on a case-by-case basis because we are actually on the discovery process. We don't know anything about the model, and we need to make sure we come to an understanding about it. Once it's documented, how does it stay current? If models need to be retrained there's potential for, say, model drift if there's different qualitative or quantitative measures that need to be put in, because the model it was trained on certain data, but then the model itself could potentially be used for something else, and we're really cognizant of that through our endorsement process too. So, we're conscious to endorse a model for a specific use to make sure the training data that it was trained on is relevant, and it should not be used for another clinical department, outside of that. but all that is governance talk. I think maybe what you're asking too is like, how do the model cards accurately describe that? And that's a good challenge, one I don't have complete answer to, because while we're focused on continuous integration between our MLOps systems and a new solution, um, if the metadata is not kept at the source of record accurate, then also the downstream model card would become inaccurate too. So I don't really have a great answer to that, other than I'm thinking if we had more resources available to us, there would be a periodic assessment, much in the way that, IA will, do a regular certification of systems through technical owners and IT departments. And I think the CIC would be best served for AI governance to do the same thing, to assess that the training data is still relevant to the way the model was used, and the model developer really is the best person, or in this case, the technical owner, to attest to the accuracy of the information. Does that help? It's a complicated subject in my mind. I kind of go around in circles about what that next process is and what the best way to handle it is, but I don't know if that really addressed your question.
It did. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Right. In the interest of time, I'll ask one quick question from the chat, and then Edmund, you can go ahead. So from Caroline, have you connected with any other health systems that are taking a similar approach to tracking their AI models?
We have had some conversations with Epic, so indirect conversations about other AMCs that have this similar kind of software development lifecycle we do, which often starts with research. I'll say with mixed success working through Epic to get the kind of information we're looking to get, and how close to the mark we are in our solution. I have not had a conversation point to point with, say, another AMC about the direction we're taking with our model cards. And I would like to do that, really like to do that. In fact, I'm putting it out there now as an opportunity. If you are working along similar lines, or know of a group that is, love to make that connection with them. HIIP has been really great in Mark and company in our monthly corporate meetings, giving some feedback on the work that we're doing. So my tact here is basically to stand up this phase one, because everything we're doing in that phase one space, really is a keeper. Even if we decide that we want to enhance or go in a different direction with model cards over the coming years, we still want to get that DSI information out of the predictive analytics Epic model cards. We still want that in Caboodle. We still want to surface that in a presentation layer. And so I see that as in no uncertain terms, keeper work. And then from there, love to engage with other groups and see if there's some better solutions that we can build like kind of a community of practice around and learn from each other.
Right, Edmund.
This may be a little bit longer than we have time for in the last 60 seconds, but triggered by some of your responses to prior questions, I would like to understand a little bit more, or hear your commentary on the decision to focus on approving a model. And after the model is deployed, what policies do you have in place that are assuring the model continues to perform, considering what we know about AI drift and failure of models on hyperlocal data?
Excellent question. Yeah, so the endorsement process approves the model for implementation. Now, some models are out there and they're so immature, but the AI champion wants to bring them before us for feedback, that we're approving them for essentially a pilot implementation without even consent to put them into a workflow. So there's sort of two types of endorsements that we've tend to settle organically into over time. The latter one, where it's more of a pilot implementation, we ask them to come back and share their findings with us. And then, if we feel as an endorsing body that it has real value, that and customers out there see value in it, then it will be endorsed for a clinical workflow design. I will say that the CIC doesn't operate in a vacuum. So there's two more important steps there, as I described earlier, and that is it has to go through IT and budgeting, prioritization, and approval beyond us. And I think this plays more to your question is, we'll just take sepsis for an example. There's a sepsis work group here in Michigan Medicine, and we don't presume to prescribe to the sepsis work group what the appropriate kind of intervention point workflow is for that model. We're only endorsing it for the validity of the model itself. Like, we believe it's accurately predicting sepsis based on the parameters that the developers captured and were approved probably by the same committee. In this case, it was by the sepsis work group committee. It's up to the sepsis work group committee then to make sure that the workflow is the right kind of workflow for Michigan Medicine and Epic. And then it's really the physicians, providers that would provide feedback to the sepsis work group on the effectiveness of the model. So there's even in operations, there's an opportunity to basically pump the brakes on the model and say, this isn't performing anymore the way we anticipated. A good example of that is, risk of sepsis V1 Epic, right? We went down the path with that. And it was actually the work group that put the brakes on that and said it's firing off alerts that are going to be troublesome to providers and the floors. So now we've started on V2, and the developer teams made really good progress on the configuration implementation of that model, and is sharing information both with the CIC about the model's performance and with the sepsis work group. So there's a good bit of a triad partnership there you really need to lean into, and that's been our experience.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You're
Thanks for the
all-
question.
Thank you so much, Michael, for presenting today. Thanks everyone for sticking around. We will see you in the next Health AI Hub.
Thank you. Have a
Yep.
great day.
You too.
You.